I know if you're hearing this, you have time to listen to this week's episode because you are undoubtedly stuck in one of the never-ending lines at the TSA. The epidemic of long lines has now affected every single American, as we were all assigned spots and are now forced to wait. I'm currently 9,000 hours from reaching my gate for a flight in September. It's important to remember that these long lines are caused by one thing and one thing only: the Democratic Party's love for illegal immigrants. Wherever there's a Honduran gangbanger or a Mexican human trafficker, whenever Venezuelan drug runners or Colombian hitmen need help, the Democratic Party will be there, even if it means sacrificing American lives to do it. For example, when an 18-year-old girl in Chicago gets shot and killed by an illegal immigrant with a criminal history, those sanctuary cities are going to stay the course because the rights of law-abiding Americans mean nothing when compared to the Democratic Party's need to defend foreign murderers and rapists. Hashtag no human is illegal on stolen land. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Hello, welcome everybody. All right, so we're going to talk about two stories today. The first story is actually kind of two stories in one. We're going to talk about the DHS funding battle and as well as how that rolls into the crime problem in America. So those kind of two in one. It's going to be a long one. And then we're going to do a little fun story at the end. We're going to talk about Afroman's battle with the law, which has been hilarious. If you aren't on the internet appreciating the memes of Afroman in court, you're doing it wrong. So before we get into either of those topics, though, we're going to do our favorite comment from last week. It comes from Your Mom's House, My Rules on YouTube, who said, quote, 600 billion wasted on a war to replace a dictator with his own son. And then some shake my head emoji. Okay, Your Mom's House. My guess is that Moshtaba is already dead. I don't know that for a fact. He might be alive. Maybe he's going to pull out of it. But he's either dead or he's going to be dead. We're not replacing the Ayatollah with his son because his son is not going to rule the country. His son's not going to be in charge. I can almost guarantee that. I would be willing to bet pretty heavily that we are not spending $600 billion to replace the Ayatollah with his closeted gay son. We are spending $600 billion to kill all of the most extreme top end of the Iranian government, completely defunk their nuclear ambitions, and ultimately degrade their military capacity to wage war in the Middle East. It seems like a good investment to me. It's not just to put Moshtaba in charge. We didn't just spend $600 billion because we like him. So anyway, thanks for the comment. I appreciate the engagement. Let's get right into this first topic. Topic one. What's up with the TSA? So, I'm sure you've seen it. If you pay attention to the news and all, or you've had to do any traveling in the last few weeks, what is up with the TSA? Why do we continually get these long lines at the airport? What is going on? Why does this happen? It is a completely stupid way that we run this system, our political system, in certain cases. We have a great framework of government. It is the best. The idea of checks and balances, the idea of three co-equal branches of government that each play a function and have to work with each other to pass legislation. Like the idea behind our government, the framework really was genius level stuff from the founding fathers. The Jefferson and Madison and Adams and these people who designed this system, they really were brilliant. They understood philosophy. They understood governance. They understood John Locke and Hobbes and all of the things that happened in Europe, basically growing out of the monarchy into the aristocracy. They understood all of these things. So they came up with a great system, but our system has some quirks. And one of our quirks is the ridiculous fight they have about the budget. It is the dumbest thing in the world. The money's already spent, guys. We already spend the money. They just argue about paying for it. It's the weirdest thing in the world. The budget is not even the budget because right now they're arguing about paying for things that we already use and we're already doing, and it's just silly. So there's a fight going on in Congress right now about the Department of Homeland Security. And the Democrats do not want to fund the Department of Homeland Security because one of the sub-branches of the Department of Homeland Security is ICE. And they don't want to fund ICE. They want to abolish ICE. They want to shut down ICE. They really just want nothing but a flood of illegal immigrants to pour across the southern border. They don't like ICE. That's really what we're getting at here. And so the Democrats have held up funding bills to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Another aspect of the Department of Homeland Security, besides the counterterrorism stuff that they're also not funding, is the TSA. The TSA, who works in every single airport. So we're not paying for the TSA. So the TSA, if they weren't paying me to do my job, guess what? I wouldn't show up either. The TSA have not been showing up for their jobs. And this fight that's going on in Congress, it revolves around ICE, and it revolves around a couple things. There's some negotiating tactics. The Democrats are looking for some concessions from ICE. They say what they really want is no deportations, which is ridiculous because that's the purpose of ICE, is to enforce the border and grab people and send them back to their home countries. That's their whole job. The Democrats want a couple things, and some of it is just absolutely ridiculous that they're holding it up on. So, for example, they want to reform the warrant system and make I'm going to see if I can remember this correctly. They want to make it so that ICE has to, in order to execute a warrant, ICE has to obtain a judicial warrant, which should not be the case. They don't need a judicial warrant. So the warrant process for a lot of people is kind of, you might not understand what it is. Basically, there's a couple of different kinds of warrants that you can have. What they want is for ICE to have to operate under what's called a judicial warrant, which means that you have to go to a judge with evidence and say, we have evidence, here's the evidence we're looking for, here's the person we're looking for, here's where we're going to look for them. The judge has to review it. The judge has to then sign a warrant, and you have to take that warrant to the address, and you have to find the person or the thing that you're looking for in the place that you said you were going to do it, and then you get to execute that warrant. So that's kind of what you think of when you think of the word warrant. There's another kind of warrant that's called an administrative warrant, and that's what ICE has been operating under. And the criteria for an administrative warrant is actually less than a judicial warrant. You don't, basically a judge executing a deportation order saying this person's here illegally, there's a deportation order, or they're not a citizen, here's a deportation order. It kind of acts as its own form of a warrant where they're basically operating off this to say, well, this person's illegal. We have this administrative warrant, which is basically issued by an immigration judge that says that they can operate under this warrant to go grab the person. And the Democrats don't like that. So this is the first thing right here. Immediately ridiculous. This argument we're having, because this is part of what the Democrats would argue is due process. Due process is being weaponized by the Democratic Party in what I think is an absolutely terrible and cynical way. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. Imagine this. You think of due process in your mind right now. I'm guessing. I'm not going to just tell you what you're thinking, but I have a guess. When you hear the words due process, what do you think of? You think of the Bill of Rights. You think of your Miranda rights. You say, oh, I'm arrested. The police are going to inform me what's going on. I'm going to go to jail. I get a phone call, which is, kind of true, not really. You are entitled to a lawyer. The Fifth Amendment protects you against self-incrimination. You have the right to face your accuser. You have the right to a jury by a jury of your peers in a trial. You have all these rights that are granted to you by the Bill of Rights. And you think of that. You think of due process as that. You have to go through all these processes. You got to get fingerprinted. You're going to get photographed. You're going to get held. You're going to have a bail hearing. You're going to do this. There's a giant process to try someone in criminal court in the United States. That's what you think of when you think of due process. You think of law and order. Yes, that is an aspect of due process. Now, imagine this. Every crime in America has the right to due process, as it should. Now, the immigration court is different. It's not the same as what you think of when you think of the words of due process. So here is the cynical ploy here. The Democrats let 20 million people illegally cross the border. And then in order to deport those people, they're trying to make it difficult by claiming that we're violating due process. They don't understand the idea of due process. Due process in an immigration case is not, I grab you, I take you in, you got to be fingerprinted, you got to be photographed, you got to go before a judge, you have a bail hearing. That's not due process for an immigrant or an illegal immigrant. The illegal immigrants, basically, first of all, they should be turned back at the border. Secondly, if you grab them in the interior of the United States and they're not a citizen, all it takes is a deportation order from a judge, which is easily obtainable when they can't demonstrate citizenship, and then you deport them. The step for due process should be streamlined for illegal immigrants. Democrats are trying to make it very difficult. This is just a way to make due process more difficult. Instead of having an administrative warrant, that basically comes from a deportation judge or an immigration judge who says, you're here illegally, you can deport this person. They want you to have to grab evidence and take it to a judge and get it, instead of just a blanket thing that says you can operate under this warrant that to go grab X person because they're here illegally. They want to make it more difficult. So this is a way to weaponize due process in a way that illegal immigrants are not entitled to due process. Not the same. It is not the same for an illegal immigrant in this case, because due process in this case means you have the opportunity to show that you're a citizen, you're not, you get deported. That's actually due process. It's not what you think of when you watch Law and Order. And the prosecutor and the judge have to have a conversation, and your public defender is going to show up, and you're going to get in jail for 8 months while you have to sort this out. No. You're here illegally. Where are your papers? You don't have any citizenship papers. You're not a citizen of the United States. You go back to wherever you came from. That's it. That's the whole due process. They don't understand this. They think due process. They think Law and Order because they don't understand it. Anyway, so this warrant reform is this a non-starter for me. They're not gonna cave, but that's one of the things that Democrats are wanting in this funding bill. The other thing is they don't want ICE to wear masks. They want them to be in uniform. I'm not opposed to saying that ICE should have a standard issue uniform. We don't see, or at least a couple different versions of a standard issue uniform. I don't really like the idea of people running around in civilian clothes with a vest that just says ICE. I feel like the ICE should, when they operate in the interior of the United States, at least when you're going into cities to do things, I feel as though there should be some sort of a uniform signifier. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. The mask thing is ridiculous to me because the whole reason they wear masks is to remain anonymous, obviously. First of all, the Democrats love masks in every other case. They wanted people to mask up for COVID for 18 years. And you still see really crazy people out there wearing masks. But anyway, they're doing this because they're docs. They're doing this because their job is actually in danger because Democrats are demonizing them and making it seem like they're the Gestapo. And ICE, the assaults against ICE officers is up 1,000% in the last year. So this is also, again, a ridiculous thing. No sensitive location raids. That's another thing where they say, well, we shouldn't have ICE anywhere near. Basically, ICE should act like a bunch of pedophiles. No, you can't go to schools and churches, ICE. And this is, again, fine. I'm not actually opposed to that one. I don't think a lot of people would argue. And ICE isn't conducting large-scale raids at schools and churches. This is not a thing that's happening, despite what you might see in the media. And the other thing, they want to cut the budget. The Democrats want to cut ICE's budget, which, of course, is going to be a fight. So they have held up funding, counterterrorism, the TSA, ICE, everything that falls under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security based on this. They don't like ICE, and they think ICE is the bad guy in the situation where illegal immigrants are being deported. And ICE is the problem. So this budget fight has been going on for a few weeks. Mike Johnson, who is the leader of the House of Representatives, the Republican leader of the House of Representatives, has managed to pass the funding bill for DHS 3 separate occasions in the House. They got the votes. He managed to get the votes together to pass it through the House 3 separate times. But it goes to the Senate, and it's dead on arrival. It is not getting through the Senate. The votes are too close. They're not going to get to the 60-vote threshold. So there's a lot of talk about the filibuster and making them operate the filibuster. It's been a whole thing. Anyway, the whole thing is ridiculous. And really, the Democrats inconveniencing Americans for illegal immigrants, it really just is a bad play on their part. I don't understand the logic behind it, but who knows? Sometimes the American people can be fooled. They're trying to blame it on the Republicans. They keep saying, well, we keep trying to pass the bill, but the Republicans are the bad guys. And the Republicans are like, we put the bill together. What are you talking about? Like, this is our bill. Like, we're voting for it. You can see the votes. The Republicans voted for it. The Democrats voted against it. You can't argue that they're not. The Republicans put the bill forward, and they're voting to pass this, and you aren't doing it. So I don't know how the Democrats plan to play this off, but they're attempting to. Since the TSA is not getting paid, they're calling out of work at an extraordinary rate. I think they said they've had 500 people quit from the TSA. There's 50,000 TSA employees in the United States. So 500 people have quit in the last couple weeks, and something like a 40% call-out rate I saw, where something just shy of 32 or 3,300 shifts have been missed by TSA agents just calling off work, basically saying, I'm not getting paid, I'm not going to work. So you've just seen this ridiculous long line, 7-8 hour wait times at airports just to get through security, not to get everything done, but just to get through a security line, hours and hours and hours. Donald Trump did something this week that I thought was incredibly smart. I think it's a great optics for the president. He actually took ICE and sent them in to airports to help facilitate security, to work as an auxiliary security with the TSA agents in there, which is, I think, is a great idea. The TSA is very qualified. That's kind of what they do. They do security. They are trained in border security. So this is something that they do. Obviously, some of the machines the TSA need to operate, but facilitating the line movement, that is something that ICE can easily do, watching metal detectors. So he sent them in. They're passing out waters, and I think it's a great play. I think you are making use of resources that you can. Again, they're both aspects of the Department of Homeland Security, and I think it's a great move. I think it was a good optics for the president of the United States. Again, we'll see how this plays out. I don't know. I think this is a terrible look for Democrats. I really do. I think that long lines at the airports do not help you win people over to your side. It is a fact of nature that Americans, even if they are broadly supportive of the immigration fight that the Democrats are having, excuse me. Oh, Lord. Sorry about that. Sneezing. Even if for example, Democratic voters or people who lean more left are broadly supportive of the efforts of the Democratic Party, this is a terrible way to do it. Having a fight that inconveniences Americans at the expense of Americans, you are trying to help illegal immigrants. That's what this fight comes down to. It is a bad look, and it's not going to play well, I think, with most of the country. Most of the country has a common sense approach to this. A lot of people don't like the aggressiveness of the ICE raids. Fine. It doesn't really bother me. A lot of people don't like it. You look at the polling, it's not very popular. Okay, again, fine. To me, I say extreme measures are needed because the extremists of the Biden administration's border policies, their lack of a border, allowed millions of people to cross the southern border. You have to go get those people. You have to get them out of the country. I really do think that. You cannot have unfacilitated, illegal immigration and just expect everything to be fine. So I'm for it. A lot of people aren't, whatever. Even if you're broadly supportive of that, even if Democratic people are saying, oh, well, look at this. The actions of ICE are not popular. This is not a way to win people over and make them want to vote for you by saying, well, yeah, you might not like the way that they've gone in and they're grabbing people and deporting them, but you just got to wait 7 hours so you can get on your plane ride. Again, not a popular opinion, and I don't think it's going to play the way that they want it to, especially when it's so easy. You have really seen people highlighting this in the last year, but this has always been a problem. Don't get me wrong. This has always been a problem. When you're talking about crime in America, we have an issue of crime in America, and people think that America in places is a dangerous place, and it is. Or that the American people, our crime is bad because we just have a different temperament than the rest of the world. You know, you look at the British and you say, well, our crime is different than the British because we're different. Or it's different than Canada because our culture is different, because Canadians are a little nicer and Americans are a little more aggressive, and it's just something that's innate in us. The reality is that America's crime problem is caused by an incredibly small percentage of people. When you break this down, it's absolutely insane that this happens. But for example, my numbers are going to be off here. I'm sorry if I forget exactly what it was. There was something like 100 people in New York who were responsible for 6,000 to 7,000 arrests. You have this tiny group of people for shoplifting because they have weird laws in New York. And the same thing happened in San Francisco, where you have this small group of people who they just continually do crimes, small crimes. They shoplift, they do graffiti, they vandalize things, they do public indecency, public intoxication. They commit like low-level assaults where they're like pushing people and starting fights. They do all these things. You have this group of people, this small group of people that just live outside the bounds of normal society. And this small percentage of people make America way worse than it actually is, because the small percentage of people who are out there committing crimes, even the more serious crimes, they're dealt with kid gloves. Oh, well, he only shoplifted a stick of gum. Yeah, well, he shoplifted a stick of gum 112 times. Like, you understand, like, this guy doesn't care about the law. And so you have this group of people, and it's always been a small percentage. And we're highlighting in the last year the small percentage of crime, or not the small percentage of crime, but the crime that's committed by a small percentage of people, which is the illegal immigrant population in the United States. There was a murder. There was a bunch of there were 3 to 4 stories this week. I want to highlight one of them in particular. It is impossible for the Democrats to win a fight when their policies are so blatantly, obviously bad that you cannot defend them honestly, because when you're faced with examples where they don't work, the examples are hideous. In Chicago this week, there was an 18-year-old woman, Sheridan Gorman, who was killed by an illegal immigrant from Venezuela. This horrible, horrible human being was actually caught by federal law enforcement while crossing the southern border in May of 2023. But he was released into the interior of the United States by the Biden administration. He wound his way up to Chicago, where the first thing he did when he got to Chicago was get arrested for shoplifting. It's like 2020. He came over in May of 2023. He's also arrested in 2023. So he's stopped at the border, his first interaction with law enforcement. The Biden administration says, just go ahead and let him into the United States because, we don't have a border. So the Biden administration just shuffles him into the interior. He goes to Chicago. He gets arrested in Chicago. They arrest him for, he shoplifted $130 of stuff from Macy's, I think it was. And he gets a court appearance. He doesn't show up for the court appearance, so he has a warrant issued for his arrest. He's managed to, 2024, 2025, he flew under the radar. He never got caught again. He's had a warrant out for his arrest for 3 years. He's lived in Chicago for 3 years with a warrant out for his arrest. And then now he murders a woman in Chicago in a park, an 18-year-old girl in Chicago in a park. He shoots her in the back and kills her because her and her friends were walking through the park. Apparently they saw him, or they said, oh, there's someone kind of standing over there looking all weird. And the girls turned and actually ran away from him, and he shot him in the back randomly for no reason, just because he's a psychopath. This guy is the perfect example of why Democratic policies are terrible in this regard. How do you get out there? You're J.B. Pritzker. How do you get out there and defend yourself? You're Brandon, whatever his name is, the mayor of Chicago. How do you get out there and defend your sanctuary city policies? The Biden administration, the Democratic Party, who doesn't care about the southern border, they don't want a wall, they don't care about enforcement, they want to defund ICE. How do you stop this guy from getting in the country? The Biden administration just let him in. Would you have let him in? What's your answer? Because the answer is yes for most people in the Democratic Party. They would just let him in. Okay, how about when he gets to Chicago? He gets arrested. Well, this is a sanctuary city, Chicago. What does that mean? That means that when he's arrested, instead of holding him in jail, telling ICE, hey, we caught this guy who's illegal, he actually committed a crime in the United States. So not only did he break the law when he crossed the border illegally, but then he went and committed another crime in the United States. So twice now he's violated the laws of the United States. Well, they don't tell ICE. They just release him back into the streets of Chicago. Hey, man, I know that you broke the laws of the United States now 2 times when you crossed the border illegally and then you shoplifted in the country, but I'm sure you'll come back for your court appearance, right? Oh, no. What a shock. This guy who doesn't care about the law, who flaunts American law, doesn't show up for his court case, and then he just lives in Chicago for a couple years. I don't know what he's been doing, but he's been living. He's stayed alive for the last 3 years, and then he just executes a woman in the park just because. Because that's who this person was, and probably who he always was. He's a psychopath. And we're supposed to what? How does a Democrat come out here and defend that? What about Lincoln Riley? What about I could, right now, off the top of my head, if we wanted to go down this road, I could probably list 8 or 9 examples in the last 6 months of illegal immigrants that have been highlighted, committing various levels of degeneracy, murder, rape in the United States. I could find them easy examples. How do you defend this if you're a Democrat? There's no defense. So when all you have to do as a Republican is just highlight the names of all of these people, put their pictures up everywhere. This lady didn't need to die. This poor 18-year-old girl didn't need to die. It was the city of Chicago, the Biden administration, the American government, the American system failed this woman, because we allowed this scumbag into the country. For what reason? What did he bring? What positivity has he possibly contributed to America? It's just the murder of this young woman and the flaunting of our laws. I don't care anything else about him. It is irrelevant. He may have spent the last 3 years working in a soup kitchen feeding the homeless. It doesn't offset the fact that he just murdered a woman in cold blood. He didn't contribute to America. He makes America worse. It's the same with all the criminals. And this is not, I'm not talking just illegal criminals. I'm talking anyone who commits crime. I'm of the opinion that low-level crime should be treated with maximum harshness. You go out there and shoplift and you get arrested. Okay, you have to spend a day in jail. All right, you got to go spend a day in jail. You shoplift a second time. You have to go spend a year in jail. Oh, you shoplifted twice? I don't care. You stole a pack of gum, but 2 times you didn't learn from the first time that we arrested you. The second time, you just go to jail. You just go to jail. Now throw away the key. You're clearly a person who doesn't understand that you have to follow the rules. It's really not difficult to do. It's really not. I have managed to go my entire adult life without being arrested. It's not that hard. It's really not. You get up every day. I got to remind myself. I'm like, when I leave the door, if you have to do this, you can do this. My front door is over here. Every day when I get to the front door, I stop and I take a second. I go, all right, remember, when we go out there, don't shoplift, don't vandalize, don't rape, don't murder. I say this to myself. I go, oh, yeah, just a reminder, because when we leave this room, obviously all my animal instincts are going to kick out, and I'm going to have to murder and pillage when I leave No, it's not hard. It's really not difficult to do. I managed to do it my whole life. And most people do. And I'm not saying, listen, some people make mistakes. And some people, when they're young especially, you're 18 or 19 and you get arrested for stealing a pack of gum. I'm not saying we should throw this person in jail. But the guy who has been arrested 15 times, by the 5th time you're arrested, you should have been in jail for life. I don't care how small the crime was. It doesn't matter to me. It's you can't stay out of jail. You've been arrested 5 times. And you're guilty 5 times. Not like, I know people who've been arrested a couple times and they weren't found guilty, or they'll go to jail for a night for some domestic thing because they're like, well, you need to cool off. Or even a crime that I absolutely abhor, but something like drunk driving. All right, well, you go arrested once. You lose the license. You don't get to drive, or whatever the case may be. You get arrested a second time. Dude, go to jail. Seriously. You didn't learn the first time. Well, I'm sorry we treated you too nicely the first time. We just took your license away. The second time, you didn't learn your lesson? Go to jail. Straight to jail. I'm harsh on this because I think that if we just arrested criminals and put them in jail, this place gets better, because it's really not difficult to not be a criminal. So if you're going outside the law, you're not a person that, I don't want you to be my neighbor. Listen, I like having fun. I like, I do some things. I've broken some tiny laws, right? I'll violate a fireworks ordinance every once in a while. I'm not saying the little things that you're like, whatever, who cares about this? But my crimes don't affect other people. They really don't. I'm just going to be honest. I speed a little sometimes. Oh, my God. All right, I'm not dangerous. I'm not weaving in and out of traffic. I'll drive 75 when the speed limit's 65. Okay, whatever. There's a difference. We all know the difference. You know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. I don't need to explain it to you. You know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about criminal behavior. I'm talking about the people who do not care about the law. And the easiest one in the world to take care of immediately, there should be no crime in America committed by an illegal immigrant. 0 crime. Because they shouldn't be here. That's it. So when the Democrats say, yeah, but most immigrants are great, and I just hold up a picture of this young woman who was murdered in Chicago, I say, what about this one? What about this woman who was murdered? Well, but most of them aren't like that. Yeah, but he shouldn't be here. How do we filter it out through your test to say, oh, well, all these ones are good, but we just get the bad ones? No. All of them. Get all of them out. And not because I don't like immigrants. Not because I don't empathize with people who want to better their lives. I get it. But because of this problem right here, because every single person who comes across the border isn't a saint, we can't take chances. That's it. That's the reason. Because it's economically detrimental to the United States to host illegal immigrants in the United States, and because it increases crime. Because every single person who commits a crime is an unnecessary crime. So even if falsely you say that illegal immigrants commit crime at a smaller rate, which is not true, then it doesn't matter because every single one of them is unnecessary. So anyway, it's all ridiculous. Where are we at? I'm getting off too much of a rant here. Where are we at time wise? Oh my gosh, look at this. See, I talk too much, people. Why don't you let me go on like this? Why don't you ever say, Tyler, you're ranting? Stop it. We got to talk about topic 2 before we run out of time here. Okay. Topic 2. Afroman for the win. Does anyone remember Afroman? I remember Afroman from the early 2000s, late 90s. It was a very popular, he had put out a very popular album when I was a kid, really, 10 or 11 years old. And he sang that song, Because I Got High. And you might not remember it. A lot of my conservative listeners maybe don't listen to Afroman. But he sang a couple songs, Afroman and Colt 45, or Because I Got High and Colt 45. He had some popular songs when I was a kid. Anyway, Afroman's been in the news recently. I haven't heard anything about this guy in like 20 years. Haven't thought about him. Except maybe every once in a while if he pops up on Spotify. And anyway, he's been in court for a little bit because there's an incident. He was being sued by a police department. So anyway, in 2022, the Adams County Sheriff's Office executed a warrant on his property. They had 6 officers who knocked down his door for a warrant on suspicion of drug trafficking and kidnapping. Afroman was gone, but he had his wife and 1 or 2 of his children were in the house when they executed a search. So they searched his house. They didn't find anything that was illegal, drug trafficking or kidnapping evidence. They confiscated a bunch of his money that he apparently got paid for a concert he did. He had a bunch of cash laying around the house. They took a bunch of his money. They broke his door. So Afroman's upset. I don't know any of the interactions that he had with the Adams County Sheriff's Department after this, but he's mad. So he wanted them to pay for his door. They wouldn't do it. He wanted his money back. He says they stole $400 from him. They claim they miscounted it, which I think is hilarious. So the idea is they gave him the money back that was marked as evidence. He's like, hey, I'm missing $400 here. They did an internal review, and they came up with the fact that one of their deputies must have miscounted. Okay, to me, I'm not saying that this happened, but I'm saying it just seems like you stole $400 from the dude. I noticed you cut his security cameras when you did that for some reason. I don't know why that's legal to just cut someone's security cameras off in their house while you're counting their money and raiding their place. I feel like that seems like it should be illegal. But anyway, so Afroman made an album about this incident. He called Lemon Pound Cake. He basically made a bunch of songs. I think there's 12 or 16 songs on the album making fun of the sheriff's department. Yeah, every person involved in the raid, making fun of the whole thing, just basically flaming these guys in the sheriff's department. Now, let me show you an example. This isn't from the original Lemon Pound Cake, but this was 12 days ago. He put this album out. So just listen to the first minute it's called The Battle Hymn of the Police Whistleblower.
Mine eyes seen the corruption of the Adams County cops, stealing money, stealing cake when they make they traffic stops. First they screw you, then they sue you, play games and dismiss your claims. The proof's on the internet. Afroman will bring it to ya. Afroman is gonna do ya. Afroman is gonna screw ya. My proof's on the internet.
All right. So for those of you who are just listening, Afroman is marching down and singing this battle hymn in an American flag suit, American flag jacket. So the reason why this is in the news is obviously the police officers, they listened to this album and then they sued him for defamation and invasion of privacy. They basically said that his album that made fun of them, made their lives worse. They shed the crocodile tears. They were all crying, oh, he's so mean, blah, blah, blah. And they sued him for $3.9 million in damages. So this whole thing's been going through court. Afroman, meanwhile, the whole time has been making songs of a more and more personal nature about these guys, basically calling some of them a pedophile, questioning one of the lady who was involved in her sexuality, doing all these things. It's gone through court. The jury basically found their verdict this week and said that Afroman is not guilty. His argument in court was that this is freedom of speech. I could do what I want. And it's not defamation. He said, I'm a comedian and a rapper, and I'm allowed to say these things. And he was found not guilty in court, or not liable in court, and basically won. And I think it's great. So I want to show you what he said, because I love this. And take a listen. This is what he said in court.
Lies you tell about them, the more money you can make, right?
Fact, they never should have came to my house in the first place. Fact, if they hadn't came to my house, they wouldn't have put themselves on the video camera and in my music career. All of this is their fact. All of this is their fault, and they have the audacity to sue me. These people and you are the predators and the victim at the same time.
So what they did, searching your house, gave you the right to do everything you...
Under the circumstance that I got freedom of speech, after they run around my house with guns and kick down my door, I got the right to kick a can in my backyard, use my freedom of speech, turn my bad times into a good time. Yes, I do. And I think I'm a sport for doing so, because I don't go to their house, kick down their doors, flip them off on their surveillance cameras, then try to play the victim and sue them.
Outrageous.
So, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I love that. I'm a broad supporter. As most people know who watch this show, I am a broad supporter of the police. I give the police the benefit of the doubt. I work closely with police officers. I know that is an incredibly difficult job to do, and I have nothing but respect for that profession. I really do. However, that being said, I also have very high standards for the way that the police conduct themselves. So in a case like this, I don't know what happened. I don't know. They say that there was an informant who said that he was trafficking drugs and had people locked up in his house. Okay, they received bad information. They executed the warrant. They broke the man's door. They confiscated a bunch of his money, possibly stole some of his lemon pound cake, and they say, okay, hey, these things happen. So not great, but I get it. Bad information led to a bad raid. Okay, at least no one was hurt. I don't know how the interaction goes after this, but he's not guilty of the crime, or they didn't find any evidence he was guilty of the crime. So how did it go from that to him making songs and doing all this stuff? Well, he may be a difficult person to deal with. I don't know. I'm judging by the American flag jacket and glasses and the giant marijuana ring. He's probably not, the ego on him is probably not the easiest to deal with, especially when you're making a mistake. However, the police, I feel like in this case, they don't sound like they were apologetic. They took his money. They were flipping him off on camera. They basically treated him with disdain. And again, he's not a criminal. He found no wrongdoing. So basically, you broke into an innocent man's house and made his life worse. You should be the ones who are apologetic, and you should be the ones you should be paying to fix his door. You should be returning all his money. You should be conducting an actual internal investigation to say, well, what the hell happened to this $400 that we're not returning to the man? To just say, oh, he must have miscounted is ridiculous. You're stealing money from people. And so I think the whole thing is crazy, ridiculous. And I'm glad that he won, because I do believe you have the right to say things about people who inconvenience your life like this. I'm not saying that you have the right to slander or libel people. However, in a rap song, people say some terrible things. There was a funny incident in this thing where one of the guys was, Afroman basically said he was a son of a bitch, and they were disputing it for a second. He's like, well, mom's dead. It's hard to tell. And it's like, well, yeah. Just calling someone a son of a bitch, do you have to prove that their mom was in fact a bitch to not be slander or libel? No. You can say all sorts of terrible things about people. Again, some of the things that he maybe said, and I haven't listened to all those songs, I'll be honest. I haven't listened to all of the Afroman songs. So I don't know. Maybe some of the things were completely out of line. I don't know. I don't think so, though. I think that when you're a rapper and a comedian, I think that the bar is very high for slander and libel. I do. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think he said anything illegal. I saw the big one would be calling someone a pedophile or alleging that he did something illegal that he didn't do, like pedophilia. But from what I saw, he didn't actually do that necessarily. He basically alluded to the fact that I guess the guy's brother was arrested as a pedophile, which is a known fact. And he was like, well, maybe it runs in the family. All right, well, again, maybe not a nice thing to say, but he wasn't being nice. Anyway, doesn't really matter. My point is that I have high standards for the police, and I'm glad that this guy won. I think it's a good thing when you're, to basically say that you have the ability to run your life and defend yourself in a way that you can. So Afroman, the way he could defend himself because he felt like he was wronged by the police, is bringing light to the attention by using his platform as a rapper to rap about the situation. So good for him. Anyway, if you didn't enjoy the memes this week of it, though, you're, like I said, you're doing the internet wrong because he was hilarious. He put up some really funny stuff this week, and the amount of love that the guy's getting, I think, is great because the sheriffs, the people I saw in the sheriff's department, they did not come across very well. They kind of came across like a bunch of entitled jerks, and I'm glad they lost. So anyway, we're going to leave it again. And that's speaking to someone who largely, for lack of a better term, backs the blue. So I just want to leave it there. We're going to leave it there for the week. As always, questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below if your question or comment is exceptionally awesome. Maybe if you're lucky, we'll pick it and read it next week on the show. Or if you're especially hateful, we'll probably make fun of you. So either or. Hey, it's all good for engagement, whatever you want to do. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will catch you next Friday.